Welcome to another edition of the Chicks on the Right podcast. You guys, I know everybody's just as excited as we are to have Scott Jennings.
I have to purr
on our show.
Every single time.
Mm-hmm. She
I'm
has
so
to do
glad
the
to be
purr because
here.
I can't do it.
This is you all are terrific to have me on, and I just have to say, I hear from people all over the country almost every day. Do you know these amazing women on the Chicks on the Right? They're playing your clips. They're talking about you again. They're purring about you. I'm like, I don't know them personally, but I feel like we have this cosmic connection, and
Yes.
and so this engagement's been a long time in the making, and I'm very grateful to be here and for everything.
So
thank you.
happy to have you. And after today, you can say I personally know them. We're like BFFs
That's right.
now.
That's right.
So there
That's
you
right.
go. Yeah.
Well, and this is going to be unlike perhaps other shows that you do, because most of the time when you're on CNN, you're talking about all the news, you're talking about the stuff that's going on right now, but very rarely do we ever hear you talk about you. And that's what we want to know about. That's what our audience wants to know about. So we thought we would kick it off just by asking you how you transitioned from being a White House advisor in the George Bush administration to being, let's face it, the star of the CNN right now. Like, you're the reason people are tuning in. How did that all happen?
Well, it's a long story. I worked in politics for a long time, beginning in the year 2000. So I've been doing this for 25 years and did work for President George W. Bush. And ultimately, when that was over, I did both campaigns and served in his White House. I went home to Kentucky and started a private firm and continued to work in politics somewhat there. I joined CNN in June of 2017. I had actually done about a year with Fox News before that, during the 2016 campaign. But I joined CNN in 2017, and I've been there ever since. And I've seen a lot of people come and go, and certainly a lot of iterations of the network come and go. But for me, where this really sort of took off in the last year was with the 2024 presidential campaign and all of the coverage that we were involved in. In 2020, it was a weird campaign. We didn't have in-person stuff. We weren't traveling. The conventions were virtual. It wasn't the same. So in 2024, we did it all. CNN had the pivotal debate in Atlanta. We covered the conventions. I was in Des Moines for a debate in the Republican primary. Axe and Van and I and the team, we traveled all around together. And it was really the robust coverage that this presidential campaign deserved. I became the principal sort of Republican translator from Red America, for our audience and my fellow panel mates, and created a lot of interesting content. I think one of the most inspired things CNN did during this election was create this 10 o'clock show, which you all watch and you use a lot of audio from on a daily basis. It's really the only debating show on television. And I think that's why it's working. Well, that came about in between the two conventions in 24. So really, how did we wind up here? It was a convergence of things, but really the 2024 election and my good fortune of having been at CNN at the time and our executives deciding, we're going to have a debating show and really put people at the table who know what they're doing. It all came together at the right time for me, and now we are where we are.
It's really
Well,
interesting.
a lot of people were suggesting you as press secretary, and like imagining during the election cycle, oh, Scott Jennings should do this, Scott Jennings should do that. Did Trump ever ask you to participate, or would you ever consider going back to politics in that way?
Oh, sure. I think anytime the president asks you to do something, you have to consider it. And I did think about, should I drop all this and go back into government service? I enjoyed my previous service and have enjoyed being in politics. But the more I thought about it, honestly, the more I decided I think I'm right where I need to be. And I think that one thing that we cannot do as conservatives is recede from the places that are more hostile to us. I mean, the great value of having me in this role on CNN, I think, is just that this audience and a lot of the people I debate, I'm probably the only Republican they know. and they're not hearing what half or more than half or even 80% of the country thinks about an issue on any given day. And so I feel like I've carved out this really interesting role. CNN gives me the space to do it. It's where I'm supposed to be right now. Would I rule it out in the future? Absolutely not. Would I rule out public service in the future? Absolutely not. I'm grateful for everybody who goes into it and runs for office and serves in these jobs, and maybe I'll go back to it someday. But right now, I'm right where I need to be.
I think it's interesting you talk about the hostility. When conservatives walk into like like say we went on a View or something like that, like Mock and I would probably never do that because it is so hostile. But I find it interesting. You've been in this arena for quite some time. And we have too, actually. We've been doing this for, it's been 16 years now we've been doing this, and as Chicks on the Right. And so we've seen the, I guess, just the whole political arena devolve, because it used to be, I'm old enough to remember when people could talk about politics and you could be friends with the liberal, and it's different now. Like, I speak to that a little bit because I know you're probably friends with like a Van Jones. You're friends with people at CNN. I mean, most of the people at CNN, I imagine, are pretty liberal, and walking in there every day, if you're like the only Republican walking around, it's either going to be hell every single day to work there, or you are friends with some of these people. And what is that like in today's day and age where people, like you say, like liberals don't have conservative friends, conservatives don't have liberal friends? Speak to that a little bit.
Sure. Well, some of my best friends at the network are actually Van Jones and David Axelrod, who are, two of our biggest Democratic stars. I mean, Axe is a legend of Democratic politics. Van, I think, is one of the most thoughtful people in media, and what I admire about them both is that they're both honest. They debate in good faith, and they're also willing to tell their own side hard truths. And I think there's some value in that in the punditry world. But the three of us have been together now for many years, and we've known each other. We travel together. We spend time off the air together. And I really do value my friendship with them. I think this idea of being able to debate in good faith is vital. Not everybody does that. Mm-hmm. The other thing that's vital in punditry is you can't take it personally. You go on the air and you do what you do, but you can't take it all personally. I also
how do you do that though? Because like the most recent example I can think of is when Neera Tanden was on, and to us, it seemed very obvious that you were angry. Like you guys were legit fighting. And then we noticed that you weren't on the air for a couple days. So we were like, we don't know how the scheduling works, but I don't know how you recover. My blood pressure would be way up here. I don't know how you handle some of the personalities that get on that panel, because I don't think they're arguing in good faith, like you said.
Well, some people don't, and she's one that does not. She never has. She's one of the nastiest people in Washington, D.C., and anybody who's ever worked with her or against her will tell you that. And look, I'm happy to let, as you probably noticed in my style, I don't really interrupt people. I tend to think people ought to be able to say their piece. I get interrupted, 3 to 5 seconds into everything I do, but I try to let people unspool. But I tell you, the one thing I'm not going to do is let people put words in my mouth, ascribe positions to me that I don't hold, or otherwise make bad faith arguments about, what I think is the general position of the average Republican or the average conservative in the moment. And that's what she excels at. And so, yeah, I was not happy with her. Now, do I get heated like that often? No. But sometimes I think you have to show people I'm not going to be a pushover. I'm not going to be rolled over here.
Right.
And it's one thing to debate, and it's another thing to act in a totally bad faith manner, which, some people do. On, Van and Axe, never. I mean, I never walk away from any of our debates thinking, that really was sort of a nasty move, or that was a really underhanded way to engage in that conversation. I never think that about them. But some people do come to the table and carry that attitude. I try to take everybody as they are and give them the space they need to make their arguments. My favorite part of the job, honestly, is just repeating back to people what they just said 60 seconds prior, and then listening to them say, I never said that, It happens every single night. It happens every single night.
I think the way that you argue, though, has hit a nerve with people, because you do it in a way where you are you can beat people down. Like, I'm saying this in my Daisy way. Like, you can apply a smackdown on people, but it's in a really nice, sort of gentle way. And that is it's good for conservatives, because, like you said, we've been walked all over for years. We've just kind of sat and taken a lot of crap for a lot of, and
no doubt.
We've talked about that for 16 years. We talked about how we're like, oh my God, I wish we'd just grab a set of balls and just fight back a little bit and fight fire with some of these people, because we just get walked over a lot. So I think people really appreciate your style because you're not mean. You're not mean and you're not nasty, but you do apply a smackdown when a smackdown.
And there's a little snark that we enjoy.
Yeah, we do.
We tend to be kind of snarky
well,
too.
it has to be,
so.
it has to be somewhat entertaining, right? It is a TV show. After
Totally.
all.
Right.
I think the best way to handle these debates is to show up and know something. Last night, earlier this week is a good example. This Signal story about the national security team that get on the thing. So, a lot of people would just come to the table. They would have read a few tweets, and then they just start spouting off. And I hear people all the time go out on limbs saying things they couldn't possibly know whether it's true or not, so they make assertions. You heard this about Elon Musk a lot. I know he's a Nazi, and this was a Nazi salute or whatever. No, you don't. You don't know that. But how can you find things out? Pick up the phone, call somebody, do a little more research than just read the last 5 tweets in your algorithm. Right. And that's what I do. So I picked up the phone before that show the other night. I called the National Security Advisor. I was like, give me your, give me your perspective on this. He did. I was able to go on the air and give a pretty straightforward recitation of where I thought they were and the arguments they were planning to make. It turns out most of that came true in public the next morning when Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, issued a statement on the matter. That's the best way to do it, is show up with some information.
But you were fair, too.
Yeah.
You were fair. And one of the things, with that Signal story, we got a lot of flack from our audience for criticizing the fact that it happened.
Yeah,
we did. It was a huge F up. You know what I mean? And your PR guy and Daisy that morning had said, if I had been advising Pete Hegseth, for example, how to answer reporter questions about this, here's what I would have said. And she said, you say the positive up front, how successful the mission was.
Yeah.
But then you own that a mistake happened and that it won't happen again. And nobody did that.
No.
And it felt like they were engaged in this gaslighting, which I did not like, because I don't like being gaslit by my own side, by my own team.
They were on the defense rather than being on the offense. And I think that there's a way, like you do PR. And I used to do comms for a living. And so I understand that, like, you need to put yourself on that, rather than be like on your heels. You need to make sure that you're on the offense with this stuff and go, okay, we totally screwed this up, you guys. Like, we shouldn't have been. First of all, I don't know how, like, why are they using Signal? But at the same time, I get it. Like, I guess they don't have anything that's more technologically, like, advanced than I don't know. You think they would with all the tax dollars we give them, but they don't. But I guess they're spending it on transgender mice, so they have to spend it on really important. But I mean, this is the thing. They should have been a little bit more proactive and said, okay, we probably screwed this up. It won't happen again. But I mean, I see why they're trying to put on display the good things that happen, and that's a good thing. We want to be able. Listen. If you look at what they were talking about, I look at that and I think, because I know that's what some people are wanting us to see. I can see where, these are good people. They are good people behind this.
I think that if you look at the discussion, it was a thoughtful policy discussion among high-level officials about how best to execute the president's direct orders, the impacts of those orders. So, when some of these folks were appointed, Hegseth, for instance, there was a lot of criticism. They have no idea what they're doing. They don't know anything about. When you look at this discussion, they quite obviously know what they're doing. And if you look at the military operation that took place after that, it was executed with precision.
Right.
And we did what we intended to do. We killed one of the main bad guys. And we ultimately righted a wrong of the Biden administration, which was to let these pirates, go unimpeded. The fact that they did it on Signal, it's a teachable moment. Probably won't happen again. Trump the next day said, Mike Waltz is a good man and he's learned a lesson from this. Well, of course, when you make a mistake or you do something you wish you hadn't done, what's the most important thing? Just learn a lesson and move forward and continue to do the best job that you can do. I have no problem. I mean, look, Trump did the right thing here. I think one of the reasons the Democrats are raging about this is because they are still licking their wounds from Afghanistan.
Yep.
When Biden went underwater was the day of the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal. They had long argued, the adults are back in charge, and that really sunk that talking point. It was tragic. People died. And then they treated the American soldiers and their families who died like garbage.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And I think it left a terrible taste in the mouth of the American people that Democrats don't really take national security seriously. They're bumbling, they're incompetent, and they disrespect our service members. fast forward to today, I think part of the rage is just because they know how wounded their party is going back to Afghanistan. And so they're constantly grasping to try to change the narrative. The difference, of course, is here, nobody died. No Americans died in this attack. No information was divulged. Nothing bad happened. It is a teachable moment, but there's no comparison. I would rather have the ruthless precision of the Trump administration executing against the Houthis versus the bumbling incompetence that Biden displayed on Afghanistan 100 times out of 100.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And in general, my God, that guy just had full-blown dementia and he was crapping his pants every single day. It's just, he was a disgrace, an absolute disgrace. It's like we're held to a different standard. We always have been in everything.
Yeah, but I think it gives you credibility, and we say this about Van Jones a lot too, that he is a thoughtful person when it comes to the issues. He's not just immediately going to go hard left. If there's criticism to be made on his own side, he makes it. I think you do that. I think we do that. And I think it's important for conservatives and whatever side you're on to do that, because otherwise you just look like a shill.
I'll tell you where Van has been really courageous. You know, I've been wearing the yellow hostage pin since October the 7th. Van was the second person to put it on at the network, and I know takes a mountain of grief from his own side about his support for Israel, for the hostages, for unequivocally condemning what happened on October the 7th. He has been unwavering. And
God bless him.
When I see him stand up to that, it makes my heart full, because, you know, honestly, I'll say the same thing about John Fetterman, who I disagree with on a great many issues.
Yep.
He has stood up to his own party on the issues around October the 7th. There's some value, I think, in recognizing when your political opposition does the right thing.
Right.
And I'm just going to say, without hesitation, Van Jones, John Fetterman, and a handful of Democrats have done the right thing on this Israel issue. And, in our discourse, finding people like that is rare. And when you find one, hang on to them, because they're obviously good faith actors.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And I bet you he's a hugger too, Mock. I bet he and Mock would get along beautifully. Am I wrong?
I am a hugger.
Is he a hugger? Is he a hugger, Scott?
Van and I do, we've done a few public speaking engagements together. Going to a public speaking thing with Van is like going with like a religious figure. People, it's crazy. Like, people come up to him, they want to come and touch the hem of his garment, and lay hands on Van. And meanwhile, you're just sitting there like, why did I sign up for this? Why am I the villain in all these episodes?
I think you're about to get that treatment. I mean, your popularity is exploding. You're now getting, promoted by Elon Musk. It doesn't get bigger than that.
Right.
And I got to ask, because we want to know some of the juicy gossip behind the scenes, of course, only what you're willing to share. But is Abby mad at how much attention you get? Because you are the star of her show.
You are the star.
You are.
You are.
Well, Abby, so first of all, I love Abby because she has taken on a role here that, her show before this was not like this. It was more of a standard sort of news panel type show, looked a lot like all the rest of the shows. And, they come to you and say, we're going to totally reorient your show. We're going to put it at a round table. We're going to put all these people out there and they're going to fight, it must have been kind of nerve wracking, honestly, to take on something so new in the heat of a presidential campaign. And she did it. And she has presided over, I think, the most unique and the best show on cable television. And the numbers reflect it. The ratings are good. People watch it. I think it creates the most viral moments online.
For sure.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
you are the reason for that. So I just wonder if that is weird for her, or like when you guys get scheduled, because it's different people every night. Sometimes it's Shermichael, who I also think is amazing.
Yeah.
He's not Scott Jennings, but he's great. So when you get scheduled, are you told in advance, okay, tonight you're going to be on with so and so and so and so, and when you hear certain names, are you like, oh, you know what I mean?
I usually find out who's on the show late in the day.
Okay.
And so,
do you get topics too? Do you get topics and you can research and stuff like that? I wondered about that.
So late in the afternoon, you start to get sort of the first version of the topics.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about the news cycle right now is a lot of things happen between, say, 4 o'clock and 10 o'clock.
Oh, we
and
know.
So the topics you get at 4,
Oh, yeah.
they could be totally different by the time you get to the air. We've certainly had nights where the topics get thrown out, or at least a couple of them do, and you are dealing with breaking news.
Oh, yeah.
And you got to be prepared to react to that. But, as a panelist, you don't really have control over who your fellow panelists are, what the topics are going to be. Those decisions are made by the producers, and you show up and you deal with it in the moment, and make the most of it. On the scheduling of it, I try to do this show 3 nights a week.
Okay.
Is kind of my goal, and so usually it's Monday and Tuesday, and then Thursday. There are some weeks where I have other things going on that I have to move things around. Last week, in fact, I did Monday and Tuesday, but then I had a speech in Kansas. I got invited by the Kansas Chamber of Commerce, and then I was going to come back on Thursday, and I was like, I've been home in a while, so I probably, and it's basketball's on tonight. So is anybody really watching the news? The rest of us will be watching the NCAA tournament. So
that's such a Kentucky thing to say.
So I took a day last week, but this week, I did Monday, Tuesday. I was down in DC on Wednesday. I was back in New York on Thursday. That's kind of my usual cadence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask, how often you're home. I mean, it's probably just weekends pretty much, right?
Yeah, I try to go home Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Occasionally, I'll sneak home on a Thursday. But honestly, over the last few months, in addition to my CNN stuff, I've gotten a number of public event requests. I've been able to go speak to a lot of groups, made a lot of trips.
People are going to want to start feeling your hems.
I know.
Yeah, they're going to be all over. Very
I'm going to have to put up some chain link fence around when I do these. And it's been really neat. I was just in Kansas the other day, which was a fun speech. I was in Houston a couple of weeks ago. I was in Utah recently. So a lot of these are coming in, and it's also a lot of fun to go out and talk to the people. I'll tell you one thing I hear out on the road is people love the show, but the way they're consuming it is interesting. When I started at CNN, viral clips weren't really a thing yet.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people are consuming the content of the show in little clumps, whether it's something I've put out or one of these clip aggregators has put out or a lot of news is generated on the show. So I've been kind of fascinated to see how people are consuming, the content. It's an hour show, but sometimes, 2 or 3 minutes, catches all the attention on any given night. But, getting out and talking to people, listening to people and hearing how they're consuming it has been instructive to me on how best to do the job.
It's awesome. Yeah, we really are, because our community means everything to us too. So we're all about getting out there. And not that we're famous like you, but
community.
Community
If my text messages are any indication, you all are probably the 2 most famous women in North America every day.
We walk around all the time. People don't know who we are. No, seriously. I have a question that is super personal. So if it gets cut, I won't have my feelings hurt. But I'm interested in this because I'm really interested in health and fitness and all that kind of stuff. And you have had a major glow up. Not that you weren't completely hot before, Scott Jennings, but you have had a glow up.
I would insert a purr here if I could. If I knew how to do it, I would.
But you've had a glow up over the past couple of years. And I'm curious as to what you did and how you continue to be in such great shape, especially since you do travel a lot. What do you do? What is your regimen? How do you do that?
Yeah, great question. I've been pretty open about it. So I struggled with my weight for a good chunk of my life. Didn't really know much about it, how to manage it, really until I was long into my adult years. I've had people in my family that have struggled with the same thing. It's not uncommon. But I discovered a few years ago the magic of intermittent fasting and stop eating garbage. These are the 2 things I discovered. Who could have known? But I discovered intermittent fasting and really kind of just cutting out the sugar, honestly.
Okay. All right.
And so during my life, when I have wanted to lose weight, which has been necessary at times, I engage in a little bit of an intermittent fasting regimen, and I try desperately to limit the sugar. I know sugar is an addiction. I know I don't want a cookie. I want 10 cookies. And you just have to know that about yourself. Mm-hmm. And it's not easy. I mean, there are people, I run into folks out there who tell me I struggle with the same thing.
Yep.
Intermittent fasting has been a good tool for me to help control some of the issues that I have. And over the last several months, I think I lost about 60 pounds, honestly.
That's fantastic.
Right? right before the conventions, I think I'd gotten up to about 240 pounds, to be honest. And I didn't feel great. I didn't love the way. And it's one thing about being on television, you get to see your own fat face on
sure
TV.
do. That
It's
is
like
right.
motivating. But I knew, but I knew I was off the rails. Like I was not following what I knew to be a healthful protocol for me.
Yeah.
So I got back on the wagon and got back into my intermittent fasting regimen. And I woke up earlier this week at 180.0 on the dot. So
That's fantastic.
so-
Good for you. So
So
you
we'll
How's
see.
your how's
We'll
your
see.
family reacting to the new attention? Because I mean, within this last year, you've exploded in popularity. Do your kids get that you're famous? Is your wife like, back off, chicks, stop purring at him?
right.
she
I know, right?
Yeah, I get a daily report on your all's commentary.
Oh my God. Tell her that we are happily married and like
I
we're just
promise
kidding. I
We're
promise.
very harmless.
We
We're
are harmless for sure. Yes.
The kids are interesting. I have 4 kids, 15, 11, 9, and 7. One of the 4 of them, my 11-year-old, I think is quite interested in what I do. My 15-year-old has a teacher at his high school who follows some of my commentary. So I think he's experienced, and his friends on the baseball team, see a lot of things on YouTube.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, so the barometer by which my oldest believes I am either doing a good or a bad job is this. If he goes to school and his friends are like, oh, your dad totally got owned on CNN last night, or man, your dad totally laid the smackdown on somebody. So
Right.
my oldest barometer of whether I'm failing as a human comes purely from his friend's interpretation of the latest YouTube
Oh my
clips.
God. I have a 15-year-old too, so I totally can relate. I can
Yeah, so
relate to
that's
that.
been an interesting way to experience that.
Yep.
But they're all really good boys, all 4 boys, and they're good kids, and they put up with a lot. They put up with the travel. They also
So
put up
what
with
are the ages, Scott? You have 15, 11.
9 and 7.
Oh my
And,
gosh, how fun.
Yep, and a lot of destruction in the Jennings household.
Oh
and
my gosh, that is a lot of testosterone for your wife. God bless her.
yep, and we
Yeah,
have
but you also
we have-
have
like
chickens. Like, do you have other like estrogen bearing animals
Like,
that
is,
can
is there
balance
like
it
a
out?
female dog or something in the
Yes.
house? Okay.
we have a pug named Fiona.
Oh, thank goodness. Thank
and
goodness
you
for
all know,
Fiona.
and you all know we have a bulldog named Elvis, which I saw.
That's right.
I saw your commentary, but I know you don't like smash face dogs.
I
But
do. She doesn't. Miriam doesn't. And Miriam is a Bulldogs fan, which makes no sense to me.
Georgia,
Her husband
yeah.
went to Georgia. This is not okay for her not to like Bulldogs. Right.
so we have 2 smash face dogs, bulldog and pug, but we have Fiona, and then we have a little terrier named Baxter who we rescued some years ago, and we have a female bearded dragon, or at least we believe it's a female. That's what the vet told
I was
us
going to
years
say, how
ago.
do you know? Yeah.
How
They
did
told
you
us it was a
how did you
female.
end up with that? Is that one of the kids?
Well, yes, when my 15-year-old was like 7, he was desperate for a bearded. Well, first of all, he was desperate for a snake, which we got him a snake,
Oh,
which
no.
promptly escaped from the terrarium and visited my wife in the bathroom one morning. I then went on this is a true story. I then went on a trip, and I come back from the trip, and I come in, and there's just a lot of somberness in the kitchen. I'm like, what is going on in here? Like, well, the snake died. I'm like, what do you mean? And my wife's like, well, we gave it a bath. I'm like, you gave it a bath? And it turns out, I'm pretty sure she just murdered the snake
Yeah.
under
Oh
the
my
guise of giving it a bath or whatever. So the snake went away. That then led to the bearded dragon, which we've had now for many years, and that I take care of. The kids, yeah, we take care of. So, but the vet early on told us she thought it was a female bearded dragon. So, long story short, female beardy, female pug, 30-something chickens that are all females. We had a rooster once.
Yeah.
It was not great. Having a rooster, if you're a backyard chicken farmer,
I had a rooster. I used to be a backyard chicken farmer. I know.
they crow
She
all
hated
day.
him.
And our rooster literally would not stop humping the chickens, like
Yeah,
literally 24 hours a day.
They are dicks. They are
They
total
are-
dicks.
I named this it was constant harassment. I named this rooster
Yeah.
Cuomo at the time because it was constantly harassing its coworkers,
Right.
and it would not shut the F up. And so I then I took the rooster to a chicken swap, and I traded it for like 3 hens. And so anyway, no more roosters in the Jennings household.
If they're not salty, they're just mean. You know what I mean?
They are.
They're one of the. They're useless. They're totally
loud.
Useless. Yeah, and loud.
They don't.
Wake you up.
They're not. And I don't fertilize eggs. We just eat the eggs. We collect the. We have layers. We eat the eggs. I'm not hatching chickens. I don't really need it.
Nobody needs a rooster. Nobody does. We love men. I mean, but I become very much of a feminist, a weird feminist when it comes to roosters. It's like they're not needed. Yeah.
These chickens I had got so mad because and like the slower chickens could not get away from Cuomo, and so they were just constantly being harassed
assaulted.
And worse and just assaulted.
Cuomo.
And they were just I have like plump laying hens, and they're not fast. They're not fast enough to escape. So I got
and they're not interested.
86 the rooster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there any chance that we're going to see a Scott Jennings hosted show? Like, is that a possibility that you're going to get your own gig at some point on CNN?
I don't know about that. I think the network is going through some evolution when it comes to different kinds of content they're producing. You could see in the future more digital only content, maybe some podcasts that they decide to produce. It's a discussion that we've had about, what else can we do here with this political team that we've assembled. And so, I don't really have anything specific to say about it other than to say CNN is my home. I haven't really told anybody this, but I'll tell you, I'm in the process of re-signing with the network for another 3 years. So
that's fantastic.
Amazing.
It was in the news. It was in the news the other day. I never really confirmed it, but it is true. I'm gonna stick with them for the long haul. And we'll see what that entails. I would do anything for them they asked me to do. They've been really good to me. They hired me, back in 2017, and they've given me all this space to perform and to do my job. So I'm really, really happy with them. And
what would you
we'll
say
see
to
what the future
people
holds.
that because we've got a lot of folks in our audience who are just, as you might imagine, virulently anti-CNN, anti-MSNBC. They're convinced that it's all fake news. What would you say to them to change their mind?
I think CNN, especially with the 10 o'clock show, is doing its level best to present a debating format that allows a conservative to go on there and make the case for what half or more than half of the country is thinking and feeling. I don't think you're going to get that really anywhere else in the media. So I can't speak for MSNBC other than to say that the clips of that I see are totally unhinged. But for CNN, I do think they understand the value of having perspectives from Americans from across the political spectrum. And yes, it does probably feel lopsided at times on the panels and so on and so forth. But I've never been censored. I've never been handed a script and said, you must read this. I've never been told you can't make this argument or that argument. All I've ever been told is be your authentic self, give us the lay of the land for the average Republican, and we'll react accordingly. And that's honestly what we've done. Interestingly about that 10 o'clock show, there really are no scripts. When you hear these debates, I'm not reading anything off a teleprompter.
Right.
These are in the moment debates reacting to what is essentially breaking news. And I think that authenticity and the willingness to put people with multiple perspectives out there is what is selling. I think it's selling in our politics. I think authenticity is the coin of the realm in public communications right now. And so the people who are getting response from audience are the people who are authentically presenting a point of view. And for CNN to, I think, recognize that and make a show of it is a good reason to watch it. And so I would encourage you to come on back in. I think you'll enjoy it, and I'll certainly keep it as entertaining as I can.
I think that's a great point, the authenticity thing. And do you think that legacy media, because of all of its sort of a propaganda slant over the past many years, has taken a hit because of the lack of authenticity? I mean, I think I hear you on the CNN thing. I think they're probably maybe a little bit different than the MSNBCs or maybe the CBSs or the ABCs. But do you think that's why they've taken such a hit, is because they aren't authentic, because they are so scripted, because they get the talking points like it's a constitutional crisis and it's a threat to democracy, and what is it like this week? I don't know. It's like there's always It's like there's always something you hear all over they all say the same things. It's like American people are smarter than that. Just shut up, And so we hear a lot. Do you think that's why they've taken such a hit?
I think the hit has come from, frankly, getting things wrong, number one. And number two, being more interested in narratives than just the facts of any situation. I mean, you look at over time, the big stories in our culture, a narrative forms. I said this on election night on CNN after Trump had won, that I thought the election last year was an indictment of the political information distribution complex. And you look at all the narratives that were formed and pushed during the campaign that all turned out to be true. And anybody with half a brain could tell they were not true.
Right.
That this was not really, how the election was going. And yet you were force-fed narratives to try to make you believe that that's how it was going. And now we have access to so much more information than we've ever had. We've sort of have a democratized information distribution system. That puts pressure to me on mainstream media to do less narratives and more authentic facts. And I think it's ultimately, some people are going to learn the lesson and some people aren't. But I really think the reason you've seen in the Gallup poll and other measurements for the media to take such a hit, it's just people don't like the narratives. They would rather know what's going on. They don't mind other points of view, but they also don't want to feel demonized for disagreeing with that point of view.
And they don't want the point of views to be like packaged in the same wrapping paper on every single channel by every single talking head. And I think that it's not even just the mainstream media that's taking the hit. It's Democrats who are in a massive identity crisis. They cannot figure out what their lane is. And so they're on the struggle bus big time. And I don't know if they're going to end up going the ways of Jasmine Crockett and AOC, or if they're going to moderate a little bit. What do you think is going to take, what would make them win? Like, what's the better option for them?
Well, the best option would be to find people who aren't lunatics, who have the ability to speak, from the heart and have an authentic point of view and not hate them because they might deviate on an issue. I mean, I've lately, it's interesting, Fetterman, who I mentioned earlier, I think he's their most authentic guy. I was not a fan of him during the campaign. I really thought that was a strange way that Senate campaign unfolded. But I have been so impressed with him. And he appears to me to speak authentically and in a way that regular people can understand. He doesn't engage in the political pablum, which I think is one of the Trump superpowers. He started the war on pablum, and 2024 kind of finished it. But you look at when Fetterman gets off the reservation, gets out of line, they go after him like crazy. They give him no space to do that. So what appears to me right now is that Jasmine Crockett is the unquestioned leader of the Democratic Party.
Oh my gosh.
He is terrifying. And then what you see are people following along and acting accordingly. So her kind of hate speech, I think, against Republicans and against people who don't vote for Democrats gets picked up on by other people like Jimmy Kimmel, the comedian, who the other night was cheering on the attacks on Tesla dealerships
and so was the
Tesla
audience.
owners. And that was my next point. Listen to the audience. They were enraptured by the idea that these violent attacks were taking place. You saw the same thing on The Daily Show. You had an audience full of people who were just roaring at the thought that, we're going to go out and be violent. That appears to me to be the way the Democrats are headed. It's sort of, we've always known they were kind of sort of emotionally unstable mobs. That's kind of the constituency group of the Democratic Party. Now you can add violent mobs to that. And I don't know that they're going to stop because there's a cheering audience that loves it. They love it. I mean, Chuck Schumer, who I dislike intensely the other day, couldn't even have a book tour event because he's afraid of his own people.
Right.
He's afraid. He was afraid of his own people going to a book tour event. So there's a lot of emotional, unhinged, and ultimately I think people with violent tendencies who are ascendant on the left right now. And I think that's where the energy in their party is. And I think it'll be to their detriment. Look at their poll numbers. I mean, they're at the lowest polling in 50 years.
Totally.
Because I think average people are like, I don't need to be screamed at. I don't need to have my car keyed. And I don't need you to tell me how wrong and rotten the United States is. I just want to live my life and have a competent government.
Yeah.
Can you give me that?
It's because everything is so based on hate. They don't have policy, but they have, I hate Trump, I hate Elon. And it's like, I can tell you what I'm against. I just can't tell you what we're for.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what they're for. And what troubles me the most is they're for silencing anybody who disagrees. I think part of the whole Kimmel thing the other night was, this wasn't him just cheering it on. It was effectively marching orders. And the message is, silence yourselves or we'll do it for you.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's what the left ultimately wants conservatives to do. They want you to go away. They want you to shut up. They want you to effectively cease any activity in the public square, that's what they want. They want to yell at you. They want to talk over you. And if you won't accept that, okay, now we're going to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
That is effectively how they operate.
And then they call us fascists.
Yes,
That
and they
can't
call
be a
everyone
winning
else fascist.
strategy.
Right.
It
Yeah.
can't. That can't be a winning strategy.
No.
There's too
Well,
many.
People hate
I
it.
have to
People are
hope.
recoiling from it.
Yeah, I was going to say I have to hope that there's way more normies out here on both sides of the aisle
Agreed.
than there are the fringe edges. But
I
man,
think-
those fringes are loud.
They are loud, and they're ascendant. And I mean, just in your own news diets, who do you see the most?
Oh yeah.
You see Crockett, you see AOC, you see Maxine Waters. I mean, you see the people on the left who are willing to say the most radical, fascist things. They're the ones who have the energy. They're the ones who are getting the airtime. They're the ones who are the most aggressive right now. I feel like the normies in the Democratic Party are receding, and they're afraid. You know, they don't know what to do. And some of the ones that I think are normies are trying to play act like they are also, you know, sort of radical, you know, people with violent tendencies, but they just sort of come off looking like, you know, idiots when they do it. I mean, you can't authentically act like that.
It's like Chuck Schumer grilling a burger. It's that level of authenticity.
Yes. And so those people sort of end up looking like buffoons.
Yeah.
So they're in a mess. They're in a true identity crisis right now. And the only thing they know to do in reaction to it is to yell louder and blow things up. And
I mean,
I just
guess
don't think it's a winning strategy.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, not a winning strategy.
Well, Scott Jennings, we're not going to take too much more of your time. This has been so fun. We're
best.
so appreciative
So
that
great to
you
finally meet
joined
you.
us.
Yes.
Our audience is going to just lose their minds
They
with
are.
happiness.
I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for your audience who I hear from on a regular basis. I really appreciate what you all do on your show every day and the dedication. I know how hard it is to produce content every day and stay on top of the news. And it's what you all do is extremely fun. It's funny. It's professionally done. And I think it's a real value to the conservative
Well, thank
movement.
you. Thank you.
I fully-
Professional is not
You
something
have
we
my
get called very
complete
often.
and total endorsement for this podcast.
We're definitely not professional, but we appreciate you and hope you can come back on the show again real soon.
Yes,
Anytime.
we would love
Yes.
it.
We
Ask
love
me
it.
All
out.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies.